This is Dr. B, the host of The Dr. B Show. He's the president of Borja Consulting Group, where he helps entrepreneurs build strong networks and grow their businesses. And this is Adam Torkeldsen, an entrepreneur and the founder of Torque Media, a digital publishing company behind dozens of online media platforms. If you're serious about understanding how raising capital actually works, you're going to want to hear this. Let's get into it.
Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of the Dr. B Show. I'm here, 75 plus episodes in. I'm here with the great Adam Torkeldsen. I said it right, I think. Adam, how you doing today?
Yeah, you did. You said it right, and I'm doing awesome.
Thank you. Man, so I'm excited to have this interview and excited for the next couple of minutes, man. Let's jump right into it, brother. Tell everyone about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be here. One of the things people usually remember about my story is that my dad was actually a circus clown. So I always bring that into my intro, and not metaphorically. He was literally a circus clown for Barnum and Bailey and Ringling Brothers. So growing up, I watched somebody whose job was to capture attention, make people laugh, and create moments people remembered. And weirdly enough, that shaped how I think about business. Because whether you're building a company, raising capital, or helping customers, you're doing something similar. You're connecting with people. But the deeper part of my story really revolves around faith and addiction recovery. There was a period in my life when I struggled with addiction, and honestly, it almost derailed everything in my life. It almost destroyed my marriage, my religion, just everything. But through faith in God and Jesus Christ, through community, and through some really difficult personal work, I was able to rebuild my life. And that experience changed how I see everything. And I always bring it up because it's a huge part of my life, and it always will be. And it made me realize that success in business is great, but purpose and alignment with God matter far more for me. And really quickly today, I run two companies. One is called Torque Media, and the Torque in that is just a play off of my last name. That was a nickname growing up, Torque, which is we just help companies grow through publishing content on our network of 200 plus websites. And my other company is called Idea Wins, where we help healthcare practices uncover financial inefficiencies and recover money they didn't realize they were losing. And also along the way, I've also become an investor in a number of private businesses. But really, at the end of the day, it's really just my story is about faith, redemption, entrepreneurship, trying to use business as a way to create value and help people.
I love it, brother. I love it, man. And thank you for that sharing that vulnerability, and thank you for sharing that. You were able to recover from that, and it almost derailed you, but it didn't, right? So, appreciate you, man. I'm gonna jump into education first. I'm a big educator. You don't see it here, but I have my degrees here. That's a whole separate story. It's not to do with ego, not to be that I'm a dentist or anything like that, like in a dental office, right? So you did go to. I'm big on education though. So you went to Utah Valley. You got your BS in communication. You also went to LADCI with a doctorate in entrepreneurship studies. How has your education helped you or shaped you in what you're doing today?
Well, one of the things I don't really put on my LinkedIn profile in terms of education experience is my homeschool. I was actually homeschooled from third grade to ninth grade, and that actually had the biggest impact on my future education, more so than anything else. And you're right, I did go to Utah Valley University here in Utah, and I got a communications degree, but I got that degree in 3 years instead of 4, and had it all paid for by an academic scholarship because I qualified for it through my experience in homeschool. Because if anybody listening is thinking about homeschool or is in homeschool, just know that in the early 90s, my homeschool experience was vastly different than what it is today. There's a lot more community and resources for homeschoolers. But in the early 90s, My mom literally invented the curriculum that I grew up learning from books that were 70 plus years old. I spent a lot of time reading and writing. That was my main education. So getting to university, there was a lot of reading and writing, come to find out. And so I just thought it was just so easy. I didn't buy books. It was just something that I had just always been doing, it seemed like. And then so getting a doctorate in entrepreneurship was just sort of for me a way to put a capstone on I really like to use education to create opportunities for the most part. And my degree in communications, it, that's what entrepreneurship is really about. It's about communicating vision, persuading customers, building partnerships. So if you can clearly communicate value, you can build almost anything. That's what I learned. So honestly, some of the most important education I've received, though, didn't happen in a classroom. It happened through my life experiences, my faith, and my recovery as well.
No, I agree with you, man, and that's awesome that you was like one of the pioneers when it comes to homeschooling. I know I'm assuming now there's like yeah resources and stuff like that, but when you did it, it was like very early on. But I'm glad that it gave you the foundation to what you're doing today. I love that. I love that, man. Totally love that. I'm gonna pivot a little bit, discussing volunteerism. I know you did a missionary, full-time missionary for 2 years. I'm also a big component on volunteerism. I've volunteered for several boards. I kind of scale back a little bit now. I'm only on one board because, I'm really looking to, I'm at a point in my life where I'm looking to scale my business, and sometimes I was spending too much time. I was on four boards at one time. It was just way too much for me. But it's not about me. It's about you today, right? So, how important you think is volunteerism? Whether it's faith based or whether it's for the community. How important is that you think for the individual or any individual?
I think it's critical. And so, based on my experience, here's why. When I was 19, it's part of my religious culture to go serve a 2 year church service mission. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And every young man is expected to go on a 2 year break from life. They don't come home. They don't get to have vacations. They don't date. It's literally you dedicate 2 years of your life to serving the people in the area that you're called to, and you don't get a choice on where that is either. So my calling was to Sacramento, California. I was there when the governor was sworn in. I was actually in the Capitol building. So that kind of tells you how long ago that was.
Yes,
And
the
that was
governor.
such a huge formative experience in my life. There's no other way to get that kind of maturity and experience that I know of, other than through dedicating your life to something that you believe in so fully, whether or not any of us agree on the actual tenets of the religion. It's just when you dedicate your life and your whole purpose is just spent focusing on serving others and sharing your beliefs, whatever they may be, you learn that the most meaningful things in life are relationships and purpose. And those lessons stayed with me through all my ups and downs. It's helped me navigate tricky situations. It was just incredible. And another volunteer opportunity I took advantage of, similar to you, I think, but I volunteered at SCORE. And if I could just make a quick plug for
Yes, you can,
score.org.
and I've partnered with Score too. But go ahead.
Yeah. So I spent 2 years volunteering with SCORE, and that was an amazing opportunity. I probably mentored over 100 different individuals in wildly different stages. Some had an idea, some had a fully functioning cash flowing business. And that experience was incredible because you get to sit across from entrepreneurs who are trying to build something meaningful. And some are really struggling, some are thriving, but all of them are trying. And I learned one of the best ways to grow as an entrepreneur is to help other entrepreneurs. Serving in that role reminded me that business is definitely not just about profit, it's about people.
I agree, brother. I agree 100%. Like my contract ended with an organization locally here in New Jersey, and that's what I did. I did training and I did mentoring for about 2 dozen businesses, and it was so rewarding to see like their progress, and I learned from them just as much as they learned from me. So I love that. You and I are very sync. I think that's why we're here today, right? So I love that.
Totally.
We're gonna pivot now into like the actual your work, right? So you did work at SEO.com. You was a writer for ReadWrite, right? You invested in several projects, right? How did all that life experience help you in starting Torque Media back in '09?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's two questions, I guess.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'll start
exactly.
with
Yes, it is. Yes.
the early career, the SEO.com, the writing, which pivoted into Torque Media and then Idea Wins. So yeah, early career, my first job actually after I graduated was at SEO.com. And I had no idea at the time how lucky I was to get a job in that industry. At the time, it was a very brand new field. It was less than 5 years old as a discipline, really. They didn't teach it in college. You could not even take a class that mentioned SEO at the time. So when I was working there, it was basically like a real world MBA of sorts. I was learning as I was doing stuff for Fortune 50 companies, Dell and Alpha Graphics. So I learned exactly how those guys use the internet to grow their business, how content drives traffic on the internet, and how online distribution works in general. And at the same time, like I mentioned, I spent my entire early years reading and writing, and a lot of it was just BS. So I was really good at just kind of like how ChatGPT comes up with stuff and you have no idea where it comes up with it. And it's obviously nonsense, but it sounds so authoritative. You can't really tell unless you look it up. That's how I did my writing. And not to say that everything I wrote was some fabrication, but it was easy for me to start crafting a story and later go back and verify, oh yeah, this is true, what I actually wrote, or not. So my style was I write it all out in my own way and with my own assumptions, and then I go back and validate with facts, or I take out the parts that were not true. So that was my writing style. That allowed me to write really quickly and get all my critical thinking very clarified in the process. And that's when I was writing for readwrite.com. And that specifically is a tech publication. I've always been fascinated with technology and personal health, honestly. But I'm going to make a bridge to that in just a second. But again, it just, when I was writing for all the different publications, I wrote for Forbes and Inc. and Entrepreneur as well as ReadWrite. So if you Google me, you'll see my bylines in all those places. But if you can't explain an idea clearly, you probably don't understand it well enough yet. That's what I came to understand about myself, at least. And those writing experiences eventually led me to start my own company. So I'll segue into that question. I started Torque Media in 2009. And like a lot of businesses, it didn't start with some huge launch. It started with one website. I bought a domain that I still own to this day where I publish health content. I actually picked it up because the publisher called Harcourt, which in the medical industry, they published most of the medical textbooks for a lot of the colleges. Harcourt Publishing. I think they renamed themselves later on, but they let one of their domains expire, harcourthealth.com. So I bought it on auction for a couple grand, which, by the way, I had to borrow from a friend because I didn't have any money. And that's how I started my big publishing empire, what it is today. I own over 200 different websites and several niches and verticals, but I bought that one purely on a guess and a hunch and just started building it up. And I was doing it simultaneously to working at SEO.com. So I used what I was learning at SEO.com at night when I bought that domain. And so it allowed me to accelerate my education in SEO because I was doing it for my own project. And then there just came a point where I was able to make that switch. I had acquired enough domains and enough websites and was making enough money. I was able to fully quit SEO.com and go full time on Torque Media, sorry. And it just reiterated to me that the internet is the most powerful distribution platform in history. Because if you help companies tell their story in the right places, you can change the trajectory of their business.
Not just their business, their life, right? As far as right? How
Yeah.
much they're making the bank as well, right? I love that. I love that. So when you're looking at evaluating like different domains or buying websites, like what do you use to evaluate? Like what's your criteria when it comes to that?
This is kind of technical stuff. So I'm going to use some SEO jargon.
Yeah, yep, no, no problem. It may go over this to some people, but it's all right.
Yeah, there's four things I look at. Three of them are publicly available metrics, one of which is called domain authority, which is a score given by a tool called Moz. And it is just a function of looking at how many links are pointing to a website and if they're relevant to the business of the website. There's another metric called domain rating, which is very similar, just put out by a different platform called Ahrefs. And both of those metrics tell you something about the website. It's essentially a voting mechanism that says this website has been linked to thousands of times by reputable sites, and therefore it must itself be somewhat reputable and relevant. And then, again, this is all third-party, publicly available information that's being published. You do have to have a subscription to all these platforms to get the data, but it's not a whole lot of money. Then the third thing I look at is organic traffic, which means traffic from search engines like Google or Bing or Yahoo or whatever. And then the fourth thing I look at is the niche of the site. I've got sites from finance to healthcare to lifestyle to real estate all over the place. So I try and keep a really broad mix of niches within my portfolio. That way I can work with any advertiser that comes along because the smart advertisers only want to be mentioned and linked to from relevant sites. You, and I'm just going to say this as a suggestion, but for anybody listening to this, if you're looking at building organic traffic for your website, you can buy links from relevant websites. That's the fastest way to do it, but relevancy is really important. The metrics that I mentioned are of secondary importance sometimes. If you can get a link from a really relevant publication in your niche, so let's say you're a realtor, you want to get a link from a site like realtor.com. That's the kind of relevance I'm talking about. That will help you go further and faster and more sustainably with your organic traffic than just about anything else you can do.
That's an awesome nugget. Right? If you get relevant links, right, that
Yeah.
like a realtor.com, you're basically using a Star Wars term, you're going in light speed, right? Right in regards to that, right? I love that. Love that. Cool, man. I also wanted to pivot a little bit as well, brother. I want to talk about idea wins, right? So how'd you get into that? Can you kind of give us the origin story of how that came about?
Yeah. And there's a tie-in to my very first investment. actually, which was
Which we'll
10
get
years
into that as
ago.
well, the investment stuff. But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. The first investment I ever did was actually in a company called Hydrate. It's a performance hydration and energy product that sits on store shelves right now. It's just designed to deliver electrolytes, amino acids, and nutrients really, really, really quickly. And initially, I was interested in it because of my personal interest in health and wellness. But once I became an investor, it changed how I looked at healthcare as a business because you start seeing the economic ecosystem behind the product. You think about distribution, margins, regulations. That was a big one, and customer behavior. And that investment opened my eyes to how healthcare operates as a business. And that insight eventually led me to the work we do today with IdeaWins. So when we started working with healthcare practices at IdeaWins, we kept seeing the same pattern. Doctors or providers were working incredibly hard, but the business side of their practice had huge inefficiencies. Billing systems, insurance contracts, payroll tax structures, money just leaking like a sieve out of their system. So IdeaWins just helps identify those inefficiencies to fix them. We spend 2 weeks running a free revenue leakage analysis for clinics, rural hospitals, and we show them where the money's leaking. Because sometimes the fastest way to grow a business is not more revenue, it's fixing those leaks. And that approach resonates a lot with healthcare operators.
Makes a lot of sense. You kind of remind me of that line in Rich Dad Poor Dad. You know, everyone mostly, almost everyone I think read it, or hopefully read it. It's not how much money you make, how much you keep, right? And how much
Right?
you keep is all about like everything you're saying, right? And then, so the way, well, I won't get into that. I ask you the way you get paid is not just on the back end, correct? Like let's say if you save folks money, then right? Is that correct?
Yeah, our model is performance or
Performance based.
contingency only.
Got it.
So we don't save them money or increase their revenue. We're not making anything ourselves.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Awesome. Good. 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 Now you segued on your last answer. You segued into what else I wanted to ask you about. I know you also invest in other companies as well. So when you do your due diligence and investing in companies, like what do you like? What do you look for? Is it cash
There's,
flow, yield? Tell me what do you look for, and you like getting your money back? Tell me. I
yeah,
guess all the above. Like, tell me what do you look for?
I call it my investing thesis,
Okay.
and it's pretty simple. First and foremost, I look at the operators of the business, not only their past experience, but how they present themselves when I'm talking with them. And I will never invest in a company where there's a solo operator. They have to have at least a co-founder or a board of some kind, which generally means they're further along than, startup or seed stage. But
Yeah,
I,
they're
I
not
have
pre-seed.
invested,
They're like A or even or more at that point, right? Yeah.
right. I have invested in a few early stage deals. That's where Nanohydrate was at, actually, when I invested in them. I tend not to do that anymore because the second thing I look for is cash flow visibility. And early stage companies typically just don't have cash flow. That's why they're in that stage. So again, that kind of points me to more growth stage, mature companies that have a track record of some kind. And I need to see visibility around that very deeply because I want to make an income from my investments, not just have an exit one day. So my third principle, I think a lot about principal protection. And if I were to boil this down into one sentence, it would be good investing is less about chasing upside and more about managing downside. And that mindset probably comes partly from my personal life experiences. When you've been through those hard lessons like addiction recovery, you become more focused on sustainability than hype.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I've been up in that, but I learned from my experiences, and now, like, I'm happy that, like, even my own experience, right? The decisions I made in 2020 allowed me to, like, even during the rough times, self-sustain in business. But I get it. I understand. My next question to you is a follow-up, is you have a lot of folks that stay stuck, right, in that, or struggling. Like, why do you think they struggle at that pre-seed or at that early stage? Is it like lack of structure, lack of focus, or a little bit of both? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I think most entrepreneurs, when they're first starting up, they think too big and they don't think about sales nearly enough. Because, in my opinion, if you can sell, you can survive almost anything in a business. And when I was talking to Noelle Picus Pace on my podcast last week, she's an Olympian here from Utah. She's won gold and silver in the Olympics for the downhill luge, which to me it is just nuts. I would never do anything like that myself. But in 60 seconds, she's either going to win gold or not. That's how fast her event is. And the reason I bring her up is because, well, her mental mindset when she goes into her training and her eventual 60 seconds of make it or break it, she's focused literally on the one thing in front of her that she wants to achieve. Nothing else. She's not thinking about the podium. She's not thinking about the finish line. She's thinking about the next 2 or 3 feet right in front of her face. And when she's training, she's not thinking about what it's going to be like when she lands in Barcelona or Milan or wherever. She's not thinking about what her family is doing at that point. She is literally focused on the next rep, the next step, and her goal was just to be slightly better from one day to the next. So that's what I mean when I say start smaller than you think, because entrepreneurs can have really big visions, but they suck at executing on them because they're just focused on the big vision instead of the really small, measurable, achievable results that you need to build anything. You cannot build a big organization without a great foundation and doing the right things in the right sequence, taking the small steps.
I agree with you 100%. It's about taking those small micro steps to eventually you'll get to that big step. I agree with you. A lot of folks think about the end in mind without, thinking about the other steps in the ladder, right? Or the rungs in the ladder, right? So I totally agree with that, which will connect to one of my other questions to you. One of my last questions is, you've been in business, right? With Torque Media as an example since '09, right? It'll be, God willing, right? A couple of years, it'll be 20 years, right? So
Yep.
why, what is the secret sauce to your success? You've been in it 16, right, or 17, I think now, right? But or 16 almost. But what has been like the secret sauce to your success up to this point?
Well, I think it comes down to three things: adaptability, relationships, and faith. So the adaptability component, I think we all know at this point, and for anybody who doesn't know this yet, they will learn it. If you are not adaptable with even your main business thesis, like what you're trying to go out and accomplish today, if you're not able to adapt to changing regulations, changing markets, changing world views, you will die. So that one means you're going to have to fail a lot and be okay with it. And then secondarily, relationships. I'm learning more and more every day how important relationships are. And those are tricky because just from my own personal experience, I've noticed that there are some relationships I have that will never produce a single business outcome. And yet they're some of the most important relationships I have. Some of those include my relationship with God and Jesus Christ. And that's a little bit counterintuitive, actually, because I have been learning this kind of the hard way. God cares deeply about everything in my life and in your life. And once I accept that as a fact and I bring him in to more of my business dealings, more of my thought processes, I use him as a trusted advisor, the better life and business gets for me. So that is my third piece of advice for staying in business for a really long time, your faith. So whether somebody believes in some sort of nebulous higher power, or if they call it the universe, or if it's Buddha or whoever, I don't think it matters at all. But if you have a belief that there's something greater out there, that there's a reason why we're on Earth. We each have a special purpose for being here. If that is something that you believe in fully and deeply, then it makes it a lot easier to adapt to changing situations and have deeper, more authentic relationships with people. So I would say success in business is rarely some sort of breakthrough moment. It's a compounding process. If you
I love
stay
that.
humble,
Yep.
stay curious, and stay aligned with your values, things tend to work out over time.
I love that. Adaptability, relationships, and faith. I love that. Very easy to remember. I love that. I'm winding down, man. We have a couple more final questions. So, what advice would you give entrepreneurs jumping in now?
Well,
Don't do it. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
that actually ties back to when I was talking about um, learning sales and starting small. Um, I would add a third piece of advice. Stay connected to your faith and your purpose. Everything else can change in life. You could go back to working a 9 to 5 W-2 job and then find yourself with another opportunity to start a business with some friends. But through it all, the people and relationships that you have in your life and the faith and purpose that you have in your life, that's what really matters at the end of the day. Because like Jairo, you said, in sort of a sarcastic way, but it's actually
It was
pretty
true though.
true.
It was true.
Don't start a business
Right.
because entrepreneurship is stressful and it is 100% unpredictable. And so having that spiritual foundation really matters a lot.
I appreciate that. No, thank you so much for that. Um, Also, I know you're an investor. I'm an investor as well, so thank you for that. What advice would you give investors looking to at least jump in the game? What worked for me, I don't know. I mean, you could obviously you're going to answer the question, but what worked for me at least was I started as an LP, limited partner on a deal, and eventually over time, then I joined the bigger team, and then I became a general partner. Now down that road. Do you give this similar advice, or what's your advice for someone like I say, hey, I'm fortunate. I have cash, sitting in the bank. What advice would you give those individuals looking to invest in other companies?
Yeah, I think I would say the best investors think in decades, not quarters, because a lot like entrepreneurship, investing is not something that you can always guarantee success that you've seen in the past. But I really like what you said, starting out as an LP or a
Okay.
limited partner
Yeah.
and learning from those experienced operators. You can observe how the deals work, and it allows you to be patient. One of my favorite sayings in sales actually is you should never go whale hunting when you're hungry. And it means, especially in healthcare consulting, there are some big networks and organizations that if I could land one of them as a client, I'd never have to work again. But that doesn't mean that I neglect going fishing every day for the smaller opportunities because those will pay your bills until you land that whale. And that could be 2 to 3, 5 years. I know guys who've spent 2+ years working on one deal that they eventually landed. But if you're not out there working and fishing every day, whether it's in your sales or your outreach or whatever those mechanics look like for you on a daily basis, if you stop doing those things and you just focus on the whale or the big payoff, it's really easy to get lost and and your success is much more tied to the daily habits that you're creating that allow you to be more patient.
That's a great point, brother. My CMO says the same thing. Like, yeah, we could make the 6 figures per month, but you got to gradually work your way up to get there, right? And then also you got to pay bills, right? So,
Right.
I like how you made that correlation. What my last question, or next to last question? Um, any final thoughts?
One of the biggest lessons I've learned is that success is not just about building businesses. It's about becoming the kind of person who can handle success responsibly. My faith in God and Jesus Christ, my recovery journey, my family, and my community have all shaped that perspective. And if there's one thing I would leave with your listeners, it's this: your story isn't defined by your worst chapter, it's defined by what God does with the chapters that follow.
I love that. That's a fantastic mic drop moment. Where can people find more information about you, Adam?
Easiest place is LinkedIn. I'm the only Adam Torkelson on there, so it's easy to find me. Also easy to misspell my name, so don't get discouraged if you mispronounce it or misspell it. Everybody does it. My website's torquemedia.com and ideawins.com, and I also host a podcast called The Vision with Execution Show, where we talk with entrepreneurs and investors about how ideas actually turn into real businesses. And also, I like to drop my cell phone number in all these podcasts because a lot of people are afraid to pick up the phone and just make a call. And I want to make it easy. If anybody wants to chat with me, you can text me or call me. My number is 801-602-9873.
I love it. Old school still works, right? You can still pick up the phone and call. Adam Torkelson, thank you so much for being on my show. We had a fantastic call, fantastic conversation, and I actually think that we could spin it off into different episodes. We could do one on strictly investing, another strictly entrepreneurship, faith, right? So we could take this as far as we could go, right? So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Adam Torkelson, everybody.